um, Trixie's New Trick Part 2. I'm back here. We don't need an intro because the longer I talk here, the more time I steal, so no time to lose. Part 2, here we go. Days of practice passed. She had used the spell each day in secluded places, pumping herself up until she could no more and then releasing it all again. And each time she was very surprised about the sensation it caused to Crow and Crow. The show would have several ponies doing the job, only meaning she could become even bigger than. Alone the thought of this was thrilling. Her being the one to show them who was boss, by growing bigger than all of them, entirely unbreakable. Sunny was only a night away. Everything was ready. But then there was a knock at the door just as she was getting ready to sleep. With a grumble, she walked to the door, moaning a "What do you want?" before she saw him again. The dark blue stallion had a pump with him, colored in Trixie's coat tones, sporting her cutie mark even. "For you. I've thought if this is your biggest act, you might as well have the proper tool for it." She was rather baffled, and even felt a slight blush rise upon her cheeks. "I will use it with pride tomorrow, but I need my sleep. Tomorrow is a big day." She smiled at him. "Oh, I know that. I will be there to watch how you all blow them from the seats." He chuckled before leaving the mirror for her slumber. "Good night, Trixie." The great day had arrived. Today she would bring her name back to its former glory. The seats were prepared, and the ponies were slowly flocking on in to see her. The flyers had promised a big show after all. She was so excited, waiting behind the curtains of her little stage. She wanted to wait until he arrived. After all, he was the one that had given her her best trick yet. There he was. He smiled and waved to her as she peeked out, before he sat down in the very first row. This was it. She burst out onto the stage with fireworks and confetti cannons showing off her brilliance. "Welcome, fillies and gentlecolts. I am the great and powerful Trixie, and I am here to show you things that you have never witnessed before," she told once, before working her magic. It went from the normal pull a rabbit out of the hat to saw a pony in half, but as the show continued, she could not help to see that the ponies were longing for something new. Even though she wanted to make the entire act longer, she went right ahead to the final trick. "Behold, those of you ponies that are friends to all that is magical. As for I will present to you a trick that is truly grand." A firework shot into the air, exploding into 1,000 little lights. While the ponies gasped at the pyrotechnics, her magic set the spell over her, and she pulled the pump out on stage. "I, the great and powerful Trixie, will now tie my snout with this ribbon, so that you can pump air into me with this contraption. Do not fear, as the trick is, no pony of you will be able to make me burst." She gave each pony a challenging look before setting the end of the pump in his snout, tying the muzzle securely with the ribbon. A hoof wave noted to all ponies around to give it a shot. And thus the first one stepped up, grabbing the pump, starting to fill her with air. They were cautious about it. It was new, and they seemed to not know what to expect. She watched their surprised faces as her stomach bulged out, perfectly spherical underneath her, slowly growing to touch the floor. The young stallion that had been pumping found this pretty amazing, wanting to compete against his friend in making Trixie grow, so she suddenly felt how she lifted up, far faster as in the practice. But it didn't matter much. The spell could take it. As her cheeks began to puff, she knew she had entered the second phase, when half the size of her cart, the air filling into her at an alarming speed. The first pony gave up on the fill, giving the pump to his friend, and my, was he eager. She ballooned out, feeling her limbs get that rubbery, soft feel, meaning that air was filling into them as well. This meant she was in phase 3, and so quickly. Now she was just wondering what phase 4 would do. She had never gotten that far yet. Her body creaked like a squeaky balloon, causing the two ponies that had been providing her with air to back up. She had grown slightly bigger than her cart, her huge ball of a stomach pressed against the stage. If she would keep it up, she might just consume the first row soon. However, a brave Pegasus mare snagged the pump, floating next to Trixie's face with a grin. "I like how big you are. I want you bigger. You're gonna explode," she taunted. Trixie grinned back, as if saying that it was on. This had just made things more interesting. The Pegasus did her best to cram air into Trixie's body as fast as possible, backing up then and when as the sphere of a pony swelled towards her. At this point, the magical mare felt a tingling in her stomach. Her limbs bloomed out, and she heard a few voices claiming that her skin was getting thin enough to see through. A few hooves appeared to be prodding her, but she was still stretchy, as if she weren't even halfway full. She only wished she could still see the ponies below, but for that she had grown too much, her head held upwards by the poofy cheeks and bloated tummy. This must be phase 4. Crack! Her cart was knocked over by her enormous middle, as she had doubled her size, still swollen. But the Pegasus gave up soon after that. She had gotten way too tired and floated down towards the ground. Trixie heard their chatter about who was going to be next, or if they should even keep trying, as it really seemed like she was unburstable. Proudly, the big and air-filled Trixie waited for a new challenger or a defeat on their side, all the while her now small-looking, air-filled legs paddled against her bouncy body. Either way, from what she heard, they were mighty impressed of what she had accomplished, causing her to grin, just for herself. Suddenly, a sting made her shudder. Her body suddenly felt like it was getting more and more cramped, the pressure in her middle rising. But as she looked at the pump, no pony was there. What was this? A voice below started to speak up, clear and as if teaching the rest. It was the stallion that had taught her the spell. "Trixie here has shown you something very fascinating about the universe today." Her body ached. She felt her limbs turn back to normal, and by now they started to sink in her body. She felt like her stomach was getting smaller, but the pressure higher and higher. The spell wasn't wearing off, was it? As we have discovered, the universe expands, seemingly everlasting, bigger and bigger. She tried to breathe out, but it was no use. The air inside her was trapped, getting squeezed together. By now she was sure that the spell was wearing off. Why didn't he help her? He could just get another pony to cast the spell back on her and release her from pain. However, nothing can go on forever. The universe, once done expanding, would snap back, getting smaller and smaller again. Her head sunk into a nearly perfectly spherical body, as well as her by now nearly vanished legs. The skin of hers made terrible sounds, wishing to give away. Stretch marks started to show, making clear just full she was, and just how little it would take. She started to sob quietly at the pain, unable to scream with the pump still stuck in the muzzle. Did she deserve this? She was going to. Eventually, it reaches its minimum, with a boom. At least, that is what we think it does. He looked at Trixie, who could barely even see him, due to her head and legs being fully swallowed by her body by now. The big balloon she had been was now a straining, creaking ball of a pony, in a painfully distended size of what a pony should have. Her skin was drum tight and tinged in a painful shade of red, only needing the last push to finally burst. He could still save her, yet he really seemed to not even want to try. So be prepared for Trixie's greatest trick yet. She will demonstrate it. The boom! He grinned at the audience, that gasped in fear. And don't worry, we are all trained professionals. It's all just a part of the show. She felt him grab the pump that was still attached to her. He heard the hiss as he pulled on it to finally give her the last blast of air. Her body trembled. The pressure became unbearable. The last thought that crossed her mind was just the question, why? The stomach pushed out only a single more inch. The stretch marks grew in length before the rupture was accompanied by a breathtaking bang that blasted over the audience, showering them in a rain of blue confetti. That was all that remained of the once great and powerful one. But they cheered at the performance. This had really blown their minds, and seeing no real signs of the light blue unicorn anymore made them believe that it really was only part of the show. Later at night, the stallion had returned home, carrying a pump with him in a dazzling light blue. He set it into a closet, looking at the other items he had there. A brown fire hose, rolled up perfectly, with a white feather perking up from it, and 2 red and white striped barrels. He still had a bit of work in front of him, but for his next target he had just the plan. "Nightlight, dinner's ready," a voice chimed from the kitchen. "I'm comin', Velvet." He smiled, closing the closet to his trophies. He had taught them their lessons. No pony was to meddle with his daughter and her friends, and if they did, he would find them and make sure they went with a bang.